What's happening, everybody? Welcome once again to Syracuse Football Postgame, presented by Krause Health. We're live on the Syracuse Orange Football Facebook page, live on YouTube and on Twitter as well. Twitter's still here. How about that? Didn't think I'd be doing this show on Twitter the way things were going earlier this week. Hello, Elon Musk. But we're here. Maybe you're watching a little bit later on YouTube. Just a reminder that the show does archive on all these channels you're watching, on the football Facebook page, on YouTube as well. We put the YouTube clip in my recap on syracuse.com as well. So if you can't be with us live to share your questions and comments about this 45-35 loss, the fifth in a row for Syracuse to Wake Forest, you can always watch the replay later. So we'll highlight your comments as they come in here. And this one is a different kind of frustration, because last week we came on, did this show after Syracuse just had no shot against Florida State, right? They were just out of that game from the get-go, 38-3. They only put up like 160 yards of offense, and it was just a day, last home game of the year. They were not in it, right? But as Antonio says right here, a tale of two seasons. They were the best of times. They were the worst of times. Very Charles Dickens-esque here for this team, who goes into the Boston College game to end the regular season. Regardless of whether they win or lose that game, they're still going to a bowl game, so it's not their last game of the season, but you don't want to set history there. History on the line, and that Syracuse would only be the third team to start a season 6-0 and then finish a season 6-6. Ron Zook's Illinois team did it in 2011. It happened at Baylor as well in 2016. And this is a different kind of frustration in this game because they were in it. They had a 21-10 lead. There's 6:53 to go in the second quarter. And then from there, Wake Forest puts up 35 unanswered points. Syracuse actually battles back somewhat. It was a little too late for Syracuse in the fourth quarter. And, there's a play there where LaQuint Allen, who was a breath of fresh air, they used him a bit today. We'll talk about how the offense was a little more aggressive in this game and showed some signs. Garrett Schrader looking as healthy as he has, certainly before the Clemson game in this one here. But LaQuint Allen scores on a 41-yard touchdown run, which he somehow managed to stay in bounds, right? And Syracuse doesn't go for two. You're down 45-27 at that point. You go for two. At the very least, it's a two-score game. And fluky things happen. It's football. I understand that if you don't go for it, then you're pretty much out of it. But, come on. What are we doing here? This is simple football math at this point, kind of further questioning Dino Babers' in-game management and in-game decisions. And then Syracuse scores on top of that. Would have been a one-score game in that scenario. And again, funky things happen. You never know. So that just kind of added to it. But we mentioned that the Syracuse offense came to life in the first half. DeMarcus Adams had a 44-yard play. Damian Alford had a 43-yard play. LaQuint Allen throws the razzle-dazzle special play touchdown, a 33-yarder to Devon Cooper. We're hearing different names there that haven't been involved in this offense in recent weeks, right? Cooper, Alford, other than, moments here and there. Adams gets back involved. LaQuint Allen, loves seeing LaQuint Allen involved in that offense, and didn't really run the ball, but like we said, he was running the Wildcat, had one bad play where he mishandled a snap. You know what? We'll let that go because he was active in the passing game. He threw the touchdown pass to Cooper. They were very aggressive offensively. They had to be. They had to get rid of the ball quickly. How about Syracuse shows up to Wake Forest? I don't remember any indication of this earlier in the week, and we know how these teams are good at hiding injury information. No Chris Bleich, no Matthew Bergeron, who accepted a bid to the Senior Bowl earlier this week, by the way. And who am I missing there? There was three offensive linemen that Syracuse was missing in this game. Bergeron out, Kalen Ellis, who has been banged up and in and out of the lineup to start with, and Chris Bleich out. So they have to put a patchwork offensive line together. Mikel Jones gets hurt, ankle injury in the first half, in and out of the medical tent. He never went into the locker room. He stayed on the field, had a boot on his foot, though. He never came back into the game. So the injury bug bites again. And now you're going into this last game against Boston College, having to win it to avoid that 6-game losing streak, to get a 7-5 record going into your bowl game where you could still finish with an 8th win in theory, right? And just to avoid a complete and utter meltdown, as Joe notes here, I mean, man, Dino's record in November has been bad. We mentioned the injuries and some others that this team has been dealing with up to this point, but that's just not a good look to start 6-0 and finish. If they do lose to Boston College, who, by the way, Boston College lost to Notre Dame today, 44-0. That team is a shell of itself right now. They've been a weird team, though. They've been competitive in some games, and I don't think Syracuse can take anybody for granted at this point. So you got to save face. They were trying to save face in this one, and it actually looked like they were going to pull it off for a while there. But, man, Sam Hartman just sliced and diced this team. Let's look at some numbers here as you guys continue to go at it here in the comments, and we'll highlight some more as we come back. Wake Forest finishes with 543 total yards in this game, 331 through the air, 212 on the ground. And this is a Wake Forest offense. Their running game came in ranked 95th in the country into this game. I mean, all I heard all week is Wake Forest can't run the ball, but everybody runs the ball on Syracuse. It's just yet another team that piled up rushing yards on the Orange, and this is the worst rushing attack that they faced in the past 5 weeks. Sam Hartman, 30 of 43. That's 331 yards and 4 touchdowns. Garrett Schrader, 17 of 31, 324 yards, a touchdown through a pick 6 as well in the second half. Sean Tucker, 16 carries, 106 yards, 2 touchdowns. So good to see Tucker back involved in this game. But again, a little too late for him. Some of those yards came in the fourth quarter when it didn't matter. Certainly had a great first half, was involved, was running the football, got in the end zone twice. Schrader with 10 carries for 26 yards as well. Aronde Gatson ends up leading Syracuse in receiving, 6 catches, 85 yards. Trevor Pena got more involved in the passing game. We mentioned Alford, 2 catches for 57, including the 43-yarder. Cooper with a 33-yard catch. Allen with a 41-yard catch. Courtney Jackson with a 25-yard catch. DeMarcus Adams, 1 catch for 44 yards. Now, they did take away a touchdown from DeMarcus Adams. There's a bogus holding call, and I know Carlos Vettorello has been susceptible to penalties this year, but that was a bogus call. And then there was one of those Perry touchdowns. A.T. Perry, who loves to see Syracuse on the schedule, 10 catches, 119 yards, 3 touchdowns. He had 3 touchdowns against Syracuse last year. This guy loves to play Syracuse, and they were picking on Isaiah Johnson all day long, Hartman and A.T. Perry in this one. Wake Forest had 36 first downs in this game. Syracuse with just 21. Wake only 3 penalties for 10 yards. Syracuse actually kept the penalties manageable by their standards with 7 for 48. Syracuse just 5 of 11 on third down. Wake was 8 of 15 on third down. And there you have it. Those were some of the key stats from this game as we go through more of your comments here. Alan saying the late scoring doesn't count. Joe say Wake had a bunch of lightly recruited players, and they're much better than Syracuse. Look, Dave Clawson, with limited resources, one of the smaller schools, not only in the ACC, but in major Power 5 football, Clawson's done an incredible job there. I mean, it helps when you have a quarterback like Sam Hartman and you strike gold there, but they've got talent all over the field. And Wake Forest just you thought last year was a fluke, right? They get into the top 10 and they had this incredible season, but he has been building a consistent winner there. Frankly, the type of program that Syracuse should be, that Syracuse needs to be. You know, Wake Forest over these past 5-6 years under Clawson, and Dave Clawson and Dino Babers are really close friends. So maybe Dino can, I don't know, try and, get Dave drunk one night and steal his playbook or something. I don't know, because Wake Forest has been the program in this ACC Atlantic, and of course the divisions go away next year, that Syracuse should be and really needs to be. Dave saying that Syracuse's defense allows 45 points tonight. Notre Dame did not allow a point, so the pressure is on the Syracuse defense to get off the field. If they lose to BC next week, Baber should be fired in the locker room, according to Scott. Those other 2 coaches, by the way, that I mentioned, Jim Grobe at Baylor and Ron Zook, were fired in those seasons. 6 wins to start, 6 losses afterwards. Didn't even coach the bowl game in either case. So the pressure is certainly going to be on John Wildhack to make a decision about that. I don't think he's going to do it. I don't think there's any way he's going to do it, frankly. Agree or disagree. You would owe Dino Babers $10 million. the money that you would have to spend for a new coaching staff. Certainly not a good look. It's not unprecedented that Syracuse has fired a coach that went to a bowl game. Paul Pasqualoni got fired after the Champ Sports Bowl. He essentially got fired at halftime of that game. But I just do not see that happening. But I've been surprised before. Michael says defense lost yet another key player. You just can't win games when you lose key players week in and week out. Is it conditioning, outsize, bad luck, bad conditioning? I know most teams are beat up this time of year. Michael, I think it's a combination of everything you just said, right? Everything you just said. I don't really know what it is in terms of training, why Syracuse seems to have more injuries than other teams. Certainly they've had injuries to key players. Now you add Bergeron to the list. You add Bleich to the list. Kalen Ellis was already hurt. Mikal Jones goes down. Tucker's been playing hurt for a lot of the season. They'll look pretty healthy tonight. Garrett Schrader fighting back from injury. Looking good. Look, I think Schrader, he had the pick six. Schrader's got to learn when to throw the football away, but there was a lot of pressure on this guy. There was a couple of plays there at the end of the first half, a possession that Syracuse absolutely should have scored on, and Schrader cost him a scoring play there by not getting rid of the football on time. I'm not excusing him from that, but look, this team has its quarterback back, and they need that. I think Carlos Del Rio Wilson down the road is going to be a great quarterback, but Schrader looked healthy. He was moving around. He was getting rid of the ball quick. They were taking shots. They were being aggressive in that first half, and then they just had a flat tire in the second half and eventually fixed it and got back into it and put some points up, but too little too late, as we mentioned at this point. So we mentioned the touchdowns. Antonio brings it up here. They got a touchdown call on a reception that didn't happen. That's absolutely true. ACC refs strike again. You know, they took away the touchdown to Adams on a bogus holding call. And that play that you're referencing there, he did not catch that football. He did not have control of that football. I can't believe they didn't see that on replay. There wasn't conclusive evidence. That's nonsense. He did not maintain possession of that ball. So ACC refs and Syracuse fans already, on a break, if you will. They don't have a good relationship to start with. And I can't really do anything to dispel the conspiracy theories about ACC refs. It's not that they're helping out the good old boys down south. It's just they're not very good at their job. ACC refs have just been incompetent, frankly, over a number of years, making these head-scratching calls. And I've seen plenty of games that involve two teams below the Mason-Dixon line where that's happening. So it's not that they have anything against Syracuse. It's just they have something against being good at their job. I don't know what that is, but I don't know how you can go to replay and give that guy that touchdown. Now, how much this swings the game, I mean, every score matters when you're trying to come back. And, Dino made the mistake of not going for two there. Let's say he goes for two. They get it. It's 45-29. It's a two-score game. They ended up scoring a couple in the fourth quarter. There was a fumble there by Sam Hartman. This was the correct call in this case. Broken clocks right twice a day kind of thing. But Hartman fumbles in the fourth quarter, right? Syracuse recovered. His knee was down. He clearly was down. But weird stuff like that happens. They could have, rallied in that fourth quarter. But if you don't go for two and don't make it a two-score game, it doesn't matter, right? They blew a timeout early in the second half of this game. It's just these things that happen consistently with this team. As Rob says, Mike Schmidt seems like the odd guy out. That's Syracuse's offensive line coach, who spent a lot of money to get Anai and back a year after getting Schmidt, who's better at producing solid running attacks, but maybe lacking when it comes to pass protection. Is he on the hot seat? I wouldn't doubt that, Rob. It's interesting that Syracuse's offensive line was nominated for the Joe Moore Award earlier this year. When they cut the list down, Syracuse certainly was not there. The other thing is penalties. Now, it wasn't so bad tonight on the offensive line. I mentioned that Vettorello hold was bogus. Bad call by the ACC refs there. Penalties have been a problem. Pass protection has been a problem. Even opening running lanes has been somewhat of an issue. It was a little better tonight. Sean Tucker looked as quick and as comfortable as he has all year and ended up over 100 yards, couple of touchdowns, got to the pylon stretched out for another touchdown where it looked like his knee was down. They reviewed that, but he had the ball across the plane while his knee was down. So, again, ACC refs made at least somewhat of a good call there and not overturning that and giving Tucker that touchdown. But I would say Mike Schmidt's under a little bit of heat here. And up until tonight, now tonight you're missing 3 guys and you're patchworking an offensive line together. I'll cut him a little slack there. But this has been as consistent an offensive line to that point that Syracuse has had. You got an NFL-level left tackle in Matthew Bergeron. The injuries have not been there. Kalen Ellis has been banged up, and now it's all coming to a head. But, the penalties were consistent. The lack of opening running games was consistent. That offensive line got pushed around by some bigger defenses, despite the fact they had a few 300-pounders and, one of their bigger, more athletic offensive lines compared to others that Syracuse has seen this year. So I don't want to put it all on the offensive line. We're not talking about like a 2020 level offensive line or, Tommy DeVito years level offensive line. Tommy DeVito in Illinois, who almost knocked off Michigan today, by the way, or I guess yesterday, because we just passed midnight here on the East Coast. So technically it's Sunday morning as we speak live here. But I would agree with your comment that Schmidt's on the hot seat, but I don't think you can put it all on him. Good news to hear that our friend Anthony's out of the hospital. Good to hear, buddy. And at least we'll get the basketball win, but this team is banged up, undersized, and too predictable. Guys, I don't want to make this sound like an excuse, but there are a lot of key players that are not on the field. And for Syracuse to go out there and be competitive in a game like this for part of it, they started competitive. Middle of the game was nowhere near competitive, and then Syracuse crawled back in this thing and at least made it a respectable score, right? But look at all the guys you're missing on defense. And you add Mikel Jones to the list. You have no Mikel Jones, who's going to play in the National Football League. You have no Garrett Williams, who's going to play in the National Football League. All the guys missing up front on the defensive line, right? You come into this game missing 3 offensive linemen, 2 key offensive linemen out. And Kalen Ellis, who's developing and is over 300 pounds and gives you something at that left guard position, out. Like, everybody's hurt. I get it. Everybody has injuries, but this team has just been snake bitten by key injuries to key guys all year long, right? But that's football. You got next man up, right? At least some of these second level guys were stepping up. It's a fair question to ask, though, in the sense of, LaQuint Allen's a freshman, so I don't really blame Dino and Robert and I until putting him out in a role that he can take on until he's ready for it. But man, where was this? Where was LaQuint Allen in the passing game? Where was LaQuint Allen, just running the Wildcat, throwing these passes, giving this offense the spark that it needed, earlier in the year? You had to see some of that in practice, and we don't see it until the second to last game of the year. It's good that they did it, right? Because now Allen gets in for next week. He gets the 15 practices that the bowl game allots. And then we'll see what he does in the bowl game to kind of take the torch from Sean Tucker, who I'm convinced, and I think most of you are convinced, is not coming back next year. We know Bergeron's not coming back next year because he's going to the Senior Bowl. I'm convinced Tucker's gone, right? Garrett Williams is gone. He's eligible to come back, but I think he'll go to the NFL draft despite his injury, and I still think he'll get picked despite his injury. There's always a surprise or two that leaves. We have the transfer portal out there, which Syracuse needs to go and dip into, because you start. I'm already looking past next week and into next year, but while we're on the subject, the 2023 recruiting class is thin. I don't know what they're doing there. Like, they have been asleep at the wheel on that thing. Maybe they're going to be more aggressive in the transfer portal. I don't know. They have Lenore Sellers coming in that class next year, who's a key quarterback recruit, but this team has quarterbacks, right? That's not a position they're lacking in. They need the hippos, the elephants, depth at offensive line. And obviously they got to build up their depth because they're losing key guys. And, there's only so many of those you can go through and remain a competitive team. There's Christopher with the comment. We're not a football school. We're a football school. The beautiful game. There you go. Good luck to SU men's soccer. as they take on Penn, 2 o'clock at the SU Soccer Stadium. Wrote a column about those guys on Friday, Christopher, and anybody else out there that I hope you can check out, and hopefully they'll make a little run to as far as they can go. College Cup in line for the Syracuse soccer team. We shall see. And that's a fun, exciting team to watch. I mean, there's really only one thing left to do for Ian McIntyre and company, and that's to win the whole bleeping thing, right? 2 guys in the World Cup, first time ever. Would have been 3 if Miles Robinson didn't get hurt. Best regular season record, best NCAA tournament bid, ACC championship. Like, all they got to do is go out there and win it. So shout out to soccer. Anthony says you can't ignore Dino's November record over the past few years. We haven't won a game in November since 2019. That's a trend, and there's multiple teams dealing with injuries this time of year. So after a while, that kind of falls on the coaches and depth. Glenn says, hey, Brent, played well tonight. They never quit. I wish they played that hard every game. Let's get a win next week. P.S. Where do I think we go to a bowl game? Love the show. Happy Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving to you and yours as well, Glenn. Appreciate you saying that. I'm thinking Fenway Park is where they're going to end up. Either Fenway Park or... Now, I'm not sure exactly how you pronounce this. This is actually a big festival in Tampa. It's basically their Mardi Gras. It's Gasparilla, I believe is how you pronounce that. Maybe some friends in Florida can help me out with that, because we get people watching all over the place on this show. It's either the Gasparilla. If they go 7-5, beat Boston College next week, I think they're going to end up in the Gasparilla Bowl in Tampa. If not, we're looking at Fenway Park and the Wasabi Fenway Bowl, which I love Fenway Park. I'm a Red Sox fan. I just don't know if I wanted to go to Fenway Park in December. I'll go to Fenway Park in December or January for one of those outdoor hockey games. Don't think I want to go there for a bowl game, though. But that's where I think they're heading at this point. Greg says, hey, what'd you think of the basketball game? Yeah, we didn't do basketball post game today because we were focused on football, but wouldn't hurt to get a hoops comment in there. They looked a lot better for sure. Had to beat a team like this because they've got a lot of games coming up that are going to be toss-ups. Richmond on Monday, St. John's or Temple on Tuesday. That ACC Big Ten Challenge is looming around the corner against Illinois. They go to Notre Dame in a couple of weeks. So I thought they looked a lot better tonight. They stuck to the zone tonight. I mean, Northeastern, not quite Colgate, not quite a team that could compete with Syracuse, but they needed that win. They needed that confidence. Gerard led the way. Jesse Edwards with 19 points. I love Judah Mintz and what he continues to be, the confidence that he has, the scoring ability that he has. Maybe that man-to-man defense waved bye-bye. And Jim Boeheim went back to basics because it was certainly looking a lot better. But you play a team like Colgate that can get open threes, that can move the ball, it's going to put a strain on that defense. So a much-needed win tonight for basketball, but they're going to be busy. Tonight started a stretch of 4 games in 7 days, including those teams that we mentioned coming up here. So there you have it. Blake says, how does this hoop team look for Monday? They look better against a bad Northeastern team. We were just talking about that, Blake. Richmond's a better team. St. John's and or Temple, both better teams, but maybe the hottest fire is the strongest steel, right, for this team at this point, as Steven mentions here. What's up, Steve? Good to see our good friend Steve. Mintz is starting to look for his teammates, too. You can just see the confidence building with Mintz right now. Antonio makes a great point there. Colgate got beat by Duquesne. So here's Colgate coming in looking like world beaters the other night, and Duquesne knocks them off. So, que sera, whatever will be, will be. Crazy stuff, right? Joe says that, go back to football here, a 6-6 team on a 6-game slide should not go to a bowl game. Yeah, I don't make the rules. 6 wins get you to a bowl game. They don't say when those 6 wins have to come, right? You get 6 wins, you go to a bowl game. We mentioned what happened to those 2 coaches that did the same thing, though. So that's what's on the line at Boston College next week. Get a win, beat a bad team. Boston College has quarterback issues. Their offensive line's a train wreck. You can certainly score on their defense, as we saw Notre Dame do today. But, man, I'm not taking anything for granted. Football's weird. Just when you think you got the upper hand on somebody, you can go out and lose a game. Who knows what other injuries are going to pile up for this team next week. But if you can go on the road and at times look good, as Syracuse did tonight. You got to be honest. The offense looked as good as it's looked since the Clemson game. At least they got in the end zone tonight. They had 2 straight games. They didn't even score a freaking touchdown. So at least they got that going for them, which is nice. Schrader is healthy. Tucker played better. Allen's involved. The other wide receivers got involved. Babers and Robert and I got a little bit of an aggressive bug in the first half and part of the fourth quarter. So that was good to see. So one would think that Boston College is in for it next week. But look, I am one that doesn't take anything for granted. Georgia Tech beat North Carolina today. Weird stuff happens in football, right? So Boston College is a game Syracuse certainly should win, and I think will win. But would I be stunned if we're sitting here next week on Postgame talking about Boston College sending the Orange to 6-6? Stunned, I would not be. No, I would not. Anthony said it too here. Look what South Carolina did to Tennessee today, any given Saturday in college football, right? Chris notes here, easier to raise money if your teams are good and fans care. Right now, not so much. I mean, they got some big donations early in the year. Art Jones and his brother Chandler Jones. They're building that new facility, of course, the new Lampe facility for football and all the renovations they're doing up there at Syracuse right now. They got some big money for that when they were, 4-0, 5-0, rolling on the season, looking good. Harder to do that now, right? But just avoid that 6-6 mark. Get to 7-5, beat Boston College, and then get a chance to go to 8-5. Which, by the way, you guys tell me if you feel this way too. As sad as this is to say, doesn't it feel like that's as good as it's going to get? Seriously. Like, that's as good as it's going to get. Syracuse went 10-3 in 2018, and that feels like something that's going to happen once a decade, if that. What you're really playing for with Syracuse football is exactly what they're playing for right now. 7 wins, maybe 8 wins. If they slide, they go to 6-6, which would be, that's what everybody predicted this team would be. The way to 6-6, though, would certainly be ugly if they lose 6 in a row there. But that's kind of the sad truth of it is, that's kind of as good as it gets with this team, all things considered at this point. Recruiting, depth, weather, location, coaching, all this stuff. So, something to ponder there at this point. Can Syracuse be better? I mean, they've tried time after time to bring in new coaches, try different philosophy, raising money. They're in the ACC, right? All that TV money. I know I'm bringing up a more big picture issue as opposed to looking at this Wake Forest game, but that's kind of what's on the table here. Because if they go and lose to Boston College, then all of a sudden, I don't think you can rule out the possibility of the noise getting louder in Wild Hack's ear that they've got to, pay the money, pay the bailout money, if you will, and start over. But, you start over, who comes in and can top what Dino Babers did, can top what Doug Marrone did, who had to clean up a major, major mess. Let's be honest here, right? But I don't know. That's just kind of the prevailing feeling I have at this, looking at this program right now. This is kind of as good as it's going to get, right? Michael brings up a great question here. If they end up 6-7, so let's say they go to 6-6, they lose the bowl game. That's tough because that's one winning season in 8 years. And that's hard to justify, right? That's hard for John Wildhack to go up there and justify, right? You could say bowl game till his ears bleed. You also lost 7 in a row in that scenario in that case. I do think he would be brought back in that case. I would not agree with that if that was the case. It'd be time to just move on in that situation, but I do think he would be. I just don't get the vibe from John Wildhack that he would shake things up like that. But, if they're losing 7 in a row, as opposed to where we're at now at 5 in a row, that tea kettle gets a lot louder and, maybe something happens in that situation. Pete is nominating Ed Ogeron for there. Pete, I would look at how things ended at LSU for Ed Ogeron, and I would say there are many better choices out there. Ed Ogeron's a great recruiter, but I think we've kind of turned the page on Ed Ogeron. Let's go younger than Ed Ogeron. Let's look around and get some aggressive younger coaches out there that don't have the issues that Eddie O has at this point, right? Let's say we end on that note, guys, because we're about a half hour in and I still got a column to write, and it is 12:20 in the morning. So what do you say we end there for the evening, the morning, whatever the case may be, wherever you are? Wow, this sets up a big pressure game for Syracuse to beat Boston College next week for sure. So what do we got coming up? We've got a basketball post-game show we're going to do Tuesday night after either they play St. John's or Temple. We have Thanksgiving coming up, so no Orange Weekly next week, but we'll be right back here Saturday night after that Boston College game. That's a 7:30 kickoff next week. So a couple of shows coming up post-game wise. Tuesday night for basketball, and we'll recap both days in New York, and then the Saturday game coming up against Boston College football-wise. There's a basketball game earlier that afternoon. We will not be doing post-game for the Bryant game, but if something should happen in that game, we'll just talk about it in football post-game here anyway. So before we do depart, let me say, ladies and gentlemen, happy Thanksgiving to you and yours. Hope everybody has a great holiday. Hope you get to enjoy some time off and enjoy some great food and some football, and just have a great, relaxing holiday, and we'll be back at it after that. We'll be here before that for basketball, but in case I don't see some of you in the basketball postgame, wanted to say, hey, happy Thanksgiving to everybody, and thank you. I'm thankful for you for coming by and being part of these shows, and we got a lot more to go here for sure as we go along, as football crosses the bridge into basketball, but thank you for that, and happy Thanksgiving, everybody, to you and yours. Thanks for watching tonight. This version of Syracuse football postgame presented by Krause Health. Syracuse loses to Wake Forest 45-35. We'll talk to you Tuesday night after Syracuse basketball wraps up 2 days in New York City.